There is a long-lived meme in the tech community about rewriting everything in Rust. Matrix has embraced it with the Matrix SDK, but what about the apps? You're watching Matrix Live, and today we're going to figure it out. Sorry about the no background and the awful audio, I promise it's temporary. The Matrix SDK is hosted by the Foundation. It allows the whole ecosystem not only to get a rock-solid SDK doing all the heavy lifting for them, including the hairy crypto operations, but also bindings for several other languages. But what about the apps? Element Desktop is using JavaScript, Neko is using C++, FluffyChat is using Dart, and most Rust clients are meant to be used in a terminal, which is fine for hackers, but can be scary for less savvy people. There are clients like Fractal, written in Rust and based on the Matrix Rust SDK, with the caveat that it only runs on Linux. My guest today is Kevin Booth, Principal Architect at FutureWay and Tech Lead of the project Robius. We're going to talk about the Robrix Matrix client and the Robius project more generally. Hello Kevin, and welcome to Matrix Live. This is your first time on Matrix Live?
It is. Thank you, Thibaut. Appreciate the host and the invitation to join.
All right, so you are here to talk about both Robrix and Robius. I think what makes the most sense for the audience is to start with Robrix. Can you tell us what it is?
Sure, of course. Yeah, so we have a little bit of a series of interconnected projects. Robrix itself is a new and upcoming Matrix client, currently just Matrix, but in the future, which I'm sure we'll get into, we have plans to extend it to other federated and decentralized services and to support kind of the needs of like an open source community member or developer. But right now, yeah, it's just focused on Matrix, and we're using it as sort of a testing grounds and kind of a demo for our underlying Rust app dev components and frameworks, which is Robius and other projects. Yeah.
All right, so can we have a look at it? Is it a project that you can actually show the rest of the world?
Of course, yeah. So let me screen share again. Here we go. Okay. Great. Okay. A little bit of recursion. Yeah, let me go ahead and run and build it here. Yeah, so we've been working on Robrix for, I think, just under a year. Oh, here we go. But an awful lot of that has been developing the underlying layers, the systems layers, like the Rust UI toolkits, which I'm not directly in charge of, but I contribute to a few of them. We're using the MakePad UI toolkit for this. And then our project Robius components is kind of everything else beyond just the UI widgets and the UI componentry. So yeah, I can give a quick demo. This is my personal account, so hopefully nothing too personal to share. But one of the things that we've added recently is kind of a split pane, almost like an IDE-like view for the desktop, but it also works on multiple platforms. So that's kind of the main goal of this entire project is to have a single code base with zero platform-specific code. This is all in pure Rust, nothing else at all. And it runs seamlessly across many different platforms. So right now, our target platforms that we're actively testing with are all the three major desktop OSes. So that's Mac, Windows, and Linux. And then, of course, both mobile operating systems, Android and iOS. We also do plan support for web. I think there's a little bit of an issue with certain dependencies currently building for the WASM target. And then in the future, probably sometime mid next year, we also plan to support Open Harmony, which is a relatively newly released open source operating system from Huawei and from other folks throughout China and Europe. So anyway, yeah, let's get into it. So right when we open up, so not everything is implemented, like we don't yet have kind of the administrative features for settings and stuff, but we do have, I think, most of the fundamental Matrix functionality that you would use for daily life, working and functional. So yeah, you can see we have regular screen with images, rich text formatting, and then dynamic backwards pagination to get the history of the rooms. You can have nice scrolling performance. And then more recently, like I was saying earlier, we have a desktop UI. So I'll go ahead and make this larger so you can see. The desktop UI is sort of like a what you get from an IDE with these dockable tabs. So what that means is I can open not just multiple rooms, but I can kind of arbitrarily split. And you can also see how fast things are. You can arbitrarily split and drag tabs to get multiple views like you would just with an IDE when you were working on multiple different files. And each one of these is its own independent room in which you can compose text, get notifications, save everything, and a whole variety of different features. So I think that's maybe our biggest current advantage over the existing state-of-the-art Matrix clients. One thing that I really wanted to have here is, I think, eventually a client for power users of Matrix. And while it's kind of ironic that we don't yet support all the administrative features like, moderating users, kicking, banning, creating rooms, we will in the future. But the idea is, let's utilize all of that nice screen real estate that we have in modern devices. So yeah, with this, you can, move things around pretty easily. And the performance is quite good, I think. So I've tested with, like 24, 20 plus rooms currently concurrently visible on different parts of the screen. And you generally, don't see any sort of performance issues here. So I can continue to split. Sorry, I don't have my mouse.
Yeah, I can really confirm that the performance looks really, really good. Everything looks super snappy.
Yeah, and a lot of that is in part to and thanks to MakePad, the UI toolkit that we're using, and which I also contribute to, which is created by Rick Arends and some other folks from the Netherlands and other parts of Europe. It's a small team, but we have been contributing to that as well. And the performance is identical across all of those 5 major target platforms that I mentioned before. So another thing that we have is, I can close out some of these. Like I said, a single platform, a single code base for all the platforms. So if I make it smaller, you'll see our mobile interface, right, which is just like this. Forgive this part, it's not implemented yet. But this is what you see by default on Android and iOS. And you get the same exact functionality, it's just that certain elements are moved. So this is, a standard kind of adaptive view, right? Oh, that should be fixed. As you can see, still in active development. But yeah, the performance remains the same. I actually could also give a demo on an Android emulator if you like, but it'll take a while to run that, so I can maybe do that in the background. But anyway, yeah, that's Robrix here. And, okay, yeah, so I make it larger and we're back to the desktop UI. And yeah, nice performance, single code base, no platform specific code. And, most of the daily features you would want right now. So in terms of, here, I'll go ahead and stop this. In terms of like, release status or, actual functionality, we do have a tracker on our GitHub page where you can see the remaining to-do items. I plan to write a retrospective blog post that kind of goes over what we've been doing with Robrix over the past 10 to 11 months since we began, and then a roadmap looking forward for things, not just Matrix features, but beyond, which we can also talk about. So yeah, that's a quick overview of Robrix and a look at the UI.
Yeah, so the UI looks rather basic, but at the same time very powerful, and everything looks so snappy, and you don't bump into anything. Like you can scroll really fast through all the rooms, and it just works. It's really great.
Yeah.
So the next question I have immediately is, where can I get it? And is it ready? Is it production ready?
Well, that depends on what you mean. I think what we have currently implemented, like the feature subset, is relatively stable and it should work. I'm currently dogfooding Robrix, meaning that I'm using it on a daily basis. But I think we are still missing some key features that I would characterize as sort of like required for actual real daily life usage. For example, we have not yet implemented like system notifications for when you're outside of the app and you receive a message. Obviously, that can hinder your daily usage. But aside from that, I think most of the functionality is there. Another thing that we have not yet implemented is like sending attachments along with messages. I have implemented sharing location, interestingly enough, but like sharing images and files, we haven't yet gotten there. But the reason for that and the reason for notifications is because we are trying to utilize and kind of leverage Robrix as a demo for our project Robius, and maybe this is a nice segue into that. But we could also discuss this later if you like. but those are all the components that are, in addition to the UI itself, right? So accessing platform-specific features in a nice, safe Rust abstraction. For example, location is one that we have implemented. We've also implemented things like authentication, keychain or secret storage, opening URLs, registering your app as like the default handler for a given URL or URI scheme, and a bunch of other things, right? But yeah, we haven't gotten around to things like notifications, camera. We have a little bit of AV stuff here and there, but that's whatever is currently available in MakePad, the UI toolkit. And then, accessing like file systems or file or image pickers is another thing. So we hope to finish that, I think, by the end of this year or early next year, at which point we'll have like a true alpha release of Robrix. And at that point, so maybe in about a couple of months, I think once we have notifications and those other features I mentioned, it would be much closer to something that would be production ready. But of course, it's still a very fledgling framework. We've added a lot of features to MakePad and to Robius components just for this specific app. So we are using this to drive the progress of the underlying project.
All right, so maybe we can take a step back for people who are less familiar with everything Robius. Because when you go to Robius and you take a look at the README, it mentions 3 projects, and you talked about one of them already, which is MakePad.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned one without giving its name. But the 3 projects that are mentioned on the README are MakePad, Dioxys, and OSes. So can you tell us a bit more about what those projects are and what is the intersection between those projects and Robrix?
Certainly. Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think I should probably update that README because the names have changed. So the Osiris project was originally just a separate name for, I think it stood for like operating system interfaces in Rust, roughly, right? So we have now just incorporated that into Robius, so that project name is no longer in use. But yeah, basically that's all of the stuff that I'm primarily working on, myself and a few other contributors part-time. And that would be all of the platform abstractions and all of the stuff that isn't the UI, right? So it also includes not just platform abstractions, but things like build infrastructure, right? So we're leveraging, we're not trying to rewrite everything from scratch, but for many of the feature abstractions we have, like the location, opening URIs, and all the things I mentioned before. But for build tooling, we are sort of integrating a lot of existing projects, like from the Tori project, which is a large Rust app dev organization, and Crab Nebula, they're kind of their parent company. We're using Cargo Packager on desktop platforms to generate releases and like app bundles for Robrix and for other applications that we're developing. So yeah, Robius is just a kind of an umbrella effort, very decentralized, all open source, just to facilitate all of the non-UI components that you would need to develop an app purely in Rust. And there's a very strong multi-platform focus. So that's Robius. I wouldn't say underneath it, but alongside of it, we're collaborating with a bunch of different UI toolkits. So MakePad is the one that I'm currently using for Robrix, and we use it for a variety of other things. So I contribute to that one naturally the most. But we would also like to use, and we do collaborate with other UI toolkits as well. So Dioxys is one of those. Dioxys is more of like a React style UI toolkit. And then there are many, many other UI toolkits that we also aim to have compatibility with. So we don't want you to only be able to use our Robius components, like all of those nice feature abstractions, in MakePad apps, but rather in all UI apps that are written in Rust. So Dioxys is another one. And then there's many others that I haven't mentioned on the README, like PAX, from the Line Vendor organization, there's Xylem, there's eGUI, there's so many others, Floam, a whole bunch of, and I apologize if I forgot any, but there's like there's dozens and dozens of Rust UI toolkits. So yeah, the reason behind Robius as a project and an endeavor existing is because UI toolkits are important, but it doesn't tell the whole story. So we need a lot of other components to make a functional, seamless app that integrates immersively with the platform. Yeah. So I will update that README, but yeah, that's kind of the project breakdown.
So you keep mentioning cross-platform development. Obviously, what comes to mind immediately is Electron, and you mentioned Tori a bit earlier.
Yeah.
So are you trying to compete with Electron? Are you doing something different? What is the story here?
Yeah, so no hate on Electron. I love Electron. I use many Electron apps in my daily workflow, namely VS Code. Love that. No, we're not trying to compete, but I think so. This endeavor sort of started as a research project, right? And the goal was to see how easy we can make app dev in pure Rust, right? So Rust native stuff for the entire system stack. So Electron isn't that, right? You're integrating a web engine, which means you're not directly using all of the platform native features, not just for the UI, but for all of these other, feature categories that I mentioned, OS and platform services. So it started off as basically an experiment to see how far we can push forward the state of the art of app dev in Rust, with the goal kind of being to attract two different kinds of developers. One is the major Rust fan, the Rustation who really wants to write an app in Rust, but has not been an app dev before, and they don't want to venture out to other languages. So I think that describes me, right? Long-time user, contributor to Rust. Uh, that's kind of my viewpoint and my background. And then the other set of developers that we wish to kind of recruit and advertise to is existing front-end developers who are experts in app dev, but have not used Rust. So maybe they want to try it out for their app. So that's where all these UI toolkits come in, because they offer various trade-offs and different points in the design space of React-like versus Vue-like versus imperative declarative, all these different form factors in which you can write your app in Rust. Plus, there are various DSLs for defining the UI. So in general, it's not that we're trying to replace Electron. It's more of an experiment in how native we can be, which also, as you saw from my demo in Robrix, brings some performance advantages, right? So just to compare, like an existing web app that uses Electron would be Element. We're with like 20 or 25 rooms being shown concurrently, we're sitting at around 100 to 200 megabytes of memory and very, very low CPU utilization. In comparison, Element, just showing a single room, uses about 4 to 5 times that amount of memory, maybe 5 to 600 megabytes. This is on my machine. It's not at all a scientific breakdown or analysis, but just back of the napkin math, we can be a lot more efficient. And on mobile devices, that translates to much more effective power utilization. So your battery lasts longer and things like that. But yeah, overall, I'd say it's not like necessarily a competitor, although informally we are competing with something like Electron and Tori. But as with a lot of the other Rust UI projects, we meet up jointly with them, and we have a very cooperative form of collaboration where we borrow ideas from each other. Literally just yesterday, we had a two-hour meeting with many of these UI folks just to discuss, what's going on, what are the shared problems we all have, and how can we all benefit. Like I said, I contribute to Cargo Packager, and we utilize some other tools from Tori. So yeah, it's a very, very friendly community, just like the rest of Rust and just like the rest of the Matrix community that I've interacted with so far. So yeah, it's not that we're going to replace Electron necessarily, because that's a nice way to run an existing web app on desktop with all of the native integrations that you want. But hopefully, if you want to start a new from scratch application and you want to use Rust, this will provide you just a way to easily and seamlessly do that without having to think about all the different platform idiosyncrasies or details. You can just write one code base and it just works.
Right. One difference I can see between Electron and what you're doing is that because Electron is appealing to web developers, and there are plenty of web developers, it's easier to find people who will work on Electron than to find Rust developers for now. But I hope this is going to change.
Yeah. And like I said, that other category of like the existing Rust devs like me who don't know any TypeScript or JavaScript, have never done front-end development, they want to try their hand at front-end development, perhaps write an app in Rust. So for that, they actually no longer need to learn another language. That's kind of the goal as well.
Excellent. So looking forward to what you're going to do and to the community you are building around that, because it's a really nice project. Talking of project, in the README, so maybe it's outdated. I don't know, you'll tell me. You mentioned two kind of apps, the flagship apps and the demo apps. Robrix is one of your flagship apps. Are
Yes.
you committed to maintaining a Matrix client in the long run?
Yeah, definitely. So the origins of this project were more of like just an experiment to drive the development of the UI toolkit and the underlying Robius components, right? The idea being that we would prioritize based on what we needed for the various flagship apps, and then focus our development effort on that. Since then, actually, it's turned out that the Matrix community has been great, and I'm not just saying that because we're on Matrix Live. It truly is, and I've been inspired to get a lot more involved. Right, so I attended the Matrix conference, and that was really nice in Berlin, and I learned quite a lot. Got many of my questions about SDK and general Matrix terms and concepts answered. Um, and since then, we, being my employer, FutureWay, has committed to being a gold sponsor of the Matrix Foundation. And I have also subsequently joined the governing board of the Matrix Foundation as an inaugural member. So I'm very honored to serve in that role. So I would say, yeah, we're pretty committed to Matrix. We're getting more involved, in whatever capacity we can. I have, become one of the maybe the most annoying or persistent testers of the Matrix REST SDK that isn't Element X, right? So it's always nice to have more folks using that and testing it out and contributing. But yeah, in terms of maintaining Robrix as a Matrix client, absolutely. Yeah, we are committed to that in the long term. Hoping to get even more and more collaborators and contributors on board, which hopefully this interview helps with. But yeah, we're also not just going to maintain Robrix itself, but I also help to drive more collaboration and contributions to the Matrix REST SDK, since we are using it and we benefit from it, and potentially additional funding, if that becomes available. And then in terms of just writing the code and doing bug fixes and feature releases, yeah, absolutely. So I'm working on this full time. Everything's open source, so nothing happens behind closed doors. And we fully intend to build this out into a fully functional Matrix client for power users, and then move on to other things, which can benefit general open source community members or developers at large. Be it code views, integrating local LLMs for chat room summaries or other sorts of topical analysis, supporting other decentralized features, services like Mastodon and ActivityPub things in general, and whatever else we see in the future. Yeah, TBD. But yes, we're very committed.
Right, that reminds me a bit of what Thunderbird is doing. So Thunderbird is an email client, open source email client, and they have a sometimes controversial view that they want to integrate instant messaging into an email client. And the reasoning behind that is that they want to enrich the conversations by having everything in a single place where you can link things together. Whether it's happened or not, I don't know, it's not my place to judge, but I quite like this approach where you start with something in a client and then progressively iterate and add more and more services. So really looking forward to that. Do you have a public roadmap for that?
Oh, not yet. I am literally working on it as we speak. So we just had a sort of a big recap meeting last week between the contributors of not just Robrix but all the other some of the other UI toolkits and our various Project Robius contributors to do exactly that, set forth a roadmap. I'm writing sort of a retrospective blog post where we're looking back on the first year of Robrix development, which was admittedly, I think, slower than if we had started with a fully formed app dev toolkit like Flutter or Swift UI or Kotlin on Android or something. So a lot of our time was spent on that. So I expect future development to go even faster at an accelerated pace. But yeah, anyway, we are writing a blog post to look back on what we've done, kind of recap the last year of development progress, and then establish a roadmap for the next year or two. So Robius itself, the vision is much longer term, like a 5-year project or something, until we're kind of at feature parity with other app dev toolkits. And I mean, even that is somewhat ambitious, and that hinges upon us attracting more contributors. But yeah, we do have a roadmap. I hope to publish it within the next couple of weeks. But if not, I have some vacation and then the holidays coming up. At the very least, we'll have sort of another pre-alpha release of Robrix in early January, sometime next year. And with that, that'll be like the latest that you would see this roadmap and blog post come out. So I'll probably post that, in the Matrix channels, perhaps in the Matrix relevant subreddits, and then obviously the Rust groups as well. So hopefully that makes its way to whoever is viewing this at the appropriate time.
Yeah, we're going to make sure to relay the information, especially if you post it in the This Week in Matrix room, where we get all the news about the ecosystem.
Yes, I will start posting in TWIM, as it were, once we have things a little bit more stable. So I didn't want to post Robrix before it was really ready to be used on a daily basis, because that might sour some folks' opinions on it. But we're getting there. So hopefully.
First impressions matter. I understand that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So far, you seem to be really focused on the client side of things. Is it reasonable to think that you are not going to work on a Matrix server or app services?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable for us, like me myself, as part of the Robius project. It is very client oriented, just because it's focusing on the app dev experience in Rust. But it turns out we being FutureWay, actually, we have funding across a broad variety of Rust projects, and one of them does happen to be an entirely new Matrix server implementation, fully in Rust, also from scratch. So that is from the creator of Solvo, who, for those of you who aren't familiar, that's a very popular and powerful backend server and services framework written in Rust. I'm not intimately involved with that project. I think the name of the Matrix server implementation is called Palpo, P-A-L-P-O. It is open source, but it's not like widely advertised because it's not quite functional yet. They've been working on that for a few months, and not me, but some of my other colleagues, interface and liaison with them. And I think probably within the next few months, they'll be ready to have an initial version going, and we can test it with all of the existing clients. So one of the requests I had made for them was to implement sliding sync, previously the proxy, now the native sliding sync endpoint, so we can test it with things like Element X and Robrix, which also require sliding sync. And I believe they're working on that now. So yes, I myself not working on anything beyond client stuff, but we do have other folks affiliated with the Rust community and the Matrix community working on servers.
Excellent. So a server written in Rust that is not a fork of Conduit, written from scratch.
Totally separate.
I want to have them on Matrix Live when they have something more stable.
I will be happy to connect you guys. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So you said earlier you were trying to build more of a community and attract more volunteers. So where can people show up to actually help with Robrix, Robius, your projects in general?
Yeah, certainly. So thanks for helping us advertise. Yeah, we already have a small number of just volunteers who are contributing to Robrix, and some others contributing to MakePad itself and various open source Rust UI toolkits. But we would love direct help with Robrix and other Robius componentry. So if the easiest way is probably just to Google search, or use your search engine of choice for Robrix, and it should be the first result. But we're on GitHub. I think it's GitHub user is project-Robius, R-O-B-I-U-S, and then /Robrix for our repo. We also have some Matrix chat rooms. I think it's just Robrix at matrix.org, where you can come in and join the conversation. We're not super active there, but as we get more users and contributors, I think that would be a great place to kind of host these live in-person discussions. And you're also more than welcome to open an issue or a pull request on our GitHub repository.
Excellent. So I'm going to leave links to all that in the description of the episode on YouTube.
Thank you.
In the meantime, is there anything we forgot to mention that you would like the world to know?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so. I would just say, like the Matrix community, the Rust community is very open and friendly and very gracious and generous with our time. So we're always happy to help new contributors join in and get acquainted with the project. I know it can be tough, especially since Rust can be a little bit daunting for newcomers, but I would encourage you to not let that deter you from looking into the projects. But even if you're not a developer and you just want to get involved with maybe usage guides, or hell, we could use a lot of help with like the arts side of things and the designer sides of things, right? We don't have a proper designer really. I'm just doing it, as needed, and that sort of non-code but still technical contributions would be incredibly valuable. Yeah. So I mean, there's room for many different types of contributions, not just code, not just designing, but documentation is also nice. Usage guides. I try to make our code sort of this flagship app sort of an example on how best to do various UI practices and documentation and comments. So it should be fairly approachable and easy to read, albeit the code is somewhat complex, but hopefully a little bit more approachable than your average Rust project. With that being said, I don't really have anything more to add other than just to thank you for having me on and allowing us to advertise this project and hopefully attract some more contributors.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kevin, and I'll see you next week, Matrix Live. I might need a new office.